Welcome to our video entitled Raising Rescued Monarch Butterfly Eggs and Larvae to Adulthood. I'm Dennis Martin, professor as well as turf and vegetation management specialist from Oklahoma State University at Stillwater. The purpose of this video was to show the viewer how we rescued and raised to adulthood about 250 monarch eggs and larvae collected from research mowing plots during the 2017 through 2019 growing seasons. The viewer can use the same technique for enjoyment or for K through 12 and beyond educational projects. Additional educational resources for raising monarchs include the two items shown on this page. This rescue effort and video are a supplement to a research task that studied the effects of 6 mowing programs on the presence of milkweed in areas outside the clear safety zone. The work was conducted as part of Joint ODOT-OSU Item 2157. Findings of the research task are beyond the scope of this video, which focuses only on rescued eggs and larvae from mowing timing frequency trials in 2017 through 2019. Our disclaimers from the Oklahoma Department of Transportation and Federal Highway Administration are shown on this page. Also, our Oklahoma State University and Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service disclaimers are shown here. Shown in this image is myself, the principal investigator, Dennis Martin, with 2 pieces of research equipment. Above is a 100 horsepower tractor with an 8-foot wide brush hog. Below and to the left is a 20 horsepower walk-behind brush hog that was used on steep slopes and tight turn areas. If you traveled the State Highway 51 corridor between Stillwater and I-35, you probably saw these research training monarch habitat signs that have the ODOT and Oklahoma State University logos on them. There were a total of 21 plots between Stillwater to I-35 and then north to Perry. Only about 11 of those plots were used in the final year, 2019, but the signs remain at each end of the 21 plots. Regarding milkweed species in Oklahoma, milkweed are located naturally along roadsides in Oklahoma right-of-way, rangeland, and pasture. Some areas are very dense with milkweed while others are few or non-existent. You can introduce milkweed into areas and culture them and reestablish them if you wish. To our right is a picture of green antelope horn milkweed, Asclepias viridis, and it's in flower with its yellowish-green flower and purple centers. Monarch butterflies use milkweed exclusively to lay their eggs and on which their larvae feed exclusively. The milkweed contains sap that contains cardiac glucosides. These compounds are poisonous to humans and animals when consumed, and they convey benefit to monarch larvae to deter predators from eating. Here you can see one of our research plots that was mowed earlier in the season and is now due for another mowing. Before we would come in and mow these plots, we would scout the milkweeds that are present and remove the leaves that contained any eggs or larvae on them so that we could salvage the eggs and larvae and try to raise them to adulthood before administering the mowing treatments. Just as a reminder, it's especially important to leave milkweed and habitat in place when eggs, larvae, or chrysali are present. Poorly timed mowing of monarch and pollinator habitat can have catastrophic consequences, such as you see here in one of our mowed plots. Now fortunately, we removed the eggs and larvae from any of the milkweed present in this particular plot, as well as other plots prior to. Without the aid of the blue arrow, would you have been able to spot this monarch butterfly egg present on this flower bud on a green antelope horn milkweed? This image shows milkweed leaves that contain the monarch butterfly egg, which is the white dot on each of the leaves present in this image. And again, these are not foraging leaves, which we'll talk about separately. These are the leaves that actually contain the eggs, and so they were separated, and these would not be bleached or soaped. This next section deals with the collection and disinfecting of forage leaves of milkweed that are used as food for monarch larvae. In order to disinfect leaves against various parasites that can kill the monarch butterfly, when we would gather forage for the monarch butterfly, milkweed's leaves, we would use Clorox bleach in order to create a sodium hypochlorite solution that could be used to disinfect the leaves. By using this particular branded product, we intend no endorsement for it, nor do we discriminate against products of equal usefulness. Now these are US EPA registered pesticides, sodium hypochlorite, registered with both the federal US EPA and also the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture. This is a close-up of the bleach label. We use the portion of the label that discusses the 1/2 cup of bleach being added to 1 gallon of water. That gives us equivalent of 1 ounce of bleach volumetrically to 1 quart of water. So that's the solution and ratio that we use to disinfect leaves. When you're going to use bleach, remember to use the personal protective equipment or PPE that are suggested on the label. This includes eye protection, chemical resistant or water resistant gloves, as well as a measuring device. It's important to label any bags that will hold milkweed leaves. This is an example of a bag marked dirty milkweed danger. This is marked this way because these leaves, which will later be used for forage, have not been cleaned yet, and also of course milkweed leaves pose a hazard because the sap contains cardiac glycosides. Those can injure our eyes as well as give us a poisoning, both as adults and children. And when you store these leaves, be sure to store them in an area where they cannot be accessed by unauthorized adults or children. Remember, we're now talking about milkweed leaves that have been checked and that we know for sure don't contain eggs or larvae. This next process cleans the leaves of pathogens but would also kill monarch eggs or larvae if they were present on these leaves. We want to remove the designated leaves from the dirty milkweed bag, rinse under a faucet with clean running water to remove soil. Next, place the rinsed milkweed leaves in the 1:32 ratio bleach to water for 20 minutes. After that time, remove the leaves and rinse again in a clean water stream to be sure to get the bleach water solution off of them. We pat the leaves dry before placing them in a well-marked bag and storing them in a cool environment where they can be kept at approximately 42 degrees. They can keep up to 2 weeks, and you can keep quite a load of milkweed leaf forage for the monarch larvae to feed upon. Here you can see a well-marked bag. Remember, store this in an area where it cannot be accessed by uninformed family members and especially not by small children. If you cannot keep them from the refrigerator, you can store them in a cooler, replenishing the ice packs, and store them in a locked container where they cannot be accessed by unofficial human sources. There are several other species of insects that use the milkweed. However, we just relocated those outside the plots and did not raise them. This is a typical table that we used, and when we collected eggs and once they were placed on the disinfected leaves, the leaf was placed on a moist paper towel and placed in a 1-gallon container. There is only 1 egg or larvae per container. Thus, if that individual is infected, it will not be able to spread disease to other members of the population, at least not while we're raising them in the laboratory. Many times we had 20 to 100 boxes going in order to raise the monarchs to adult. This shows a sequence of eggs being collected, and here we have 2 eggs laid close together to each other. It will take 3 to 5 days for the eggs to hatch typically. And when they're ready to hatch, you'll see the dark head capsules of the caterpillar. If the entire egg turns black, you should destroy it and throw it in the garbage. Now, these are monarch caterpillars at first instar larvae. When they emerged from the egg, they will typically eat their egg casing first. There will be 5 instar larval stages with the shedding of skin between each stage. and it's 10 to 14 days in the larval stage in total during those 5 stars. This image shows shed skin visible above next to a monarch larvae below. This shows two 5th instar monarch larvae just prior to them going up into J form to move to the next stage in the life cycle. This is the J form stage. It's just prior to creation of the chrysalis, which is when the transition occurs from larvae to adult. Sometimes things go wrong and parasites or insect predators get your larvae even when you've had them inside. This individual was infected as a larvae before we even collected it from. This individual here was parasitized by a tachinid fly, and you can see the larvae emerging. Eventually it would fall to the bottom of the container, so we killed it so it wouldn't make it to adulthood in order to infect further monarchs. Here's the chrysalis stage. Pupation from larvae to adult stage takes about 10 to 14 days. The total life cycle from egg laying to emergence as adult typically will be 30 to 32 days under normal warm conditions. Here's how the chrysalis is attached to the top of the container, quite simply I might add. Sometimes monarchs die during pupation in a chrysalis from a parasite that was present and nothing more can be done. These should be disposed of in the garbage and not allowed to go out to the exterior environment. The evening prior to emergence, the chrysalis turns clear and the features of the butterfly become visible. Here we see a monarch butterfly emerging, which is called eclosure, from a chrysalis. Generally, this occurs in early to mid-morning, but occasionally in early afternoon. They can then be placed outside where they can pump up their wings, and in approximately 2 to 3 hours they'll typically fly to a nearby nectarine feeding source. Here we see a recently emerged adult male monarch butterfly. We can tell it's a male because each of the hind wings has a distinctive black dot. Females will not have the black dots indicated by the blue arrows. Remember to wait an adequate amount of time after emergence of the butterfly from the chrysalis for it to pump up its wings. Premature handling of the butterfly may damage its wings. Here a male is being placed on a goldenrod plant. You can actually let them fly on their own from the box outside. Sometimes when it's cold, wet weather, you'll have to feed them indoors because if you release them, they may be injured during cold, wet weather. You can keep them from 24 to 48 hours using a 1 part sugar to 4 parts water mix, and they can feed off of that when it's soaked into a cotton. Monarchs can be found in Oklahoma from essentially some point in April through some point in October. This shows the various portions of the life cycle. And in moist years, when there's plenty of good soil moisture and milkweed present in the summer, there are resident monarch populations during the summer. In the March-April time frame, monarchs migrating north from Mexico will lay eggs in Texas and Oklahoma. Only a small number of that population of first-generation monarchs will stay in Oklahoma over the summer, but a larger number can be present if there's good soil moisture and plenty of milkweed habitat present. Regarding the monarchs that emerge in September into early October, they will migrate south towards Mexico. I'd like to acknowledge these individuals both from ODOT and also our Oklahoma State programs for their assistance over the years in this project. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me, Dennis Martin, the presenter, at either my phone or email address shown on this slide. Thank you for viewing our video.